This meeting is being conducted in compliance with the Open Meetings Act. The Verona Board of Education passed a resolution at its annual reorganization meeting held on January 8th, 2019. The meeting set forth the schedule of its regular meetings, which resolution was within 7 days of passage. The schedule was sent to the Verona Cedarbrook Times, the Star Ledger, the Herald News, the Township of Verona, and the Verona Education Association. Postings of this meeting setting forth the time, location, and agenda were posted in each of Verona's 6 schools, the board office, and town hall. This posting was also sent to the newspapers, all SCA presidents, and SCA liaisons. The Verona Board of Education operates under a consent agenda format. Any board member has the right to have an item pulled to be voted upon or discussed separately. Copies of tonight's agenda and resolutions have been made available to the public present. Mrs. Fresky, Mr. Elworth?
Here.
Mr. Day?
Here.
Mrs. Krista?
Here.
Mr. Elliott?
Here. Thank you, Ms. Ardino. Before we begin with the regular scheduled meeting, I'd like to first ask if there's any public comment on any agenda items. Seeing none, we're going to begin with our presentations. We have 2 this evening, and first I'd like to welcome Brookdale Avenue School with Ms. Sudo, Mrs. Walker, Ms. Franks, and Mrs. Sirigliano. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Oh! That will be walking us through the Bringing Makerspace and Writers Workshop.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Nicole Studo, the principal of Brookdale Avenue School. I'd like to start out by thanking Dr. Dionisio and the Board of Ed for providing the Brookdale staff and students with the opportunity to be here this evening to highlight an area that our first graders are really proud of, a project that they've been working really hard on lately. Our presentation this evening is called Hacking the Writers Workshop, and what our staff and students will share with you is how they have brought Writers Workshop into the Makerspace. Our Makerspace at Brookdale has continued to grow over the past couple of years, and it continues to evolve. It currently serves as a space where students in library can create and explore, as well as a space where classroom teachers go with their students to explore as well and utilize for long-term projects. It's equipped with whiteboard flexible seating tables, as well as high and low seating options that the students love. Our Makerspace has many tools, from items such as cardboard and yarn to robotics and iPads. Our staff and students look forward to sharing their most recent projects with you tonight. Our presenters are Brookdale's first grade teacher, Mrs. Sirigliano, librarian Carissa Walker, special education teacher Emma Franks, and our first grade students. You guys can just wave when I say your name. We have Drew Clutterbuck, Nicholas Porcione, Quinn DeMilner, Katie Groves, Liam Groves, and Ellie Walker. They will share their experience with you in just a few minutes. Typically, when I walk into a primary classroom during independent writing portion of writing workshop, I usually see the following. Students are seated in their desks and working in some version of aligned paper choice. Oftentimes, students are working with graphic organizers that they have utilized to plan on, and they also might be illustrating their writing piece. For the most part, first grade students are working near silently, and the teacher can be found at either a table with a group of students or pulled up next to an individual conferring in a whisper voice. A few weeks ago, I walked into the Makerspace while our first graders were doing Writers Workshop in there, and the environment was quite different. Students were still writing independently, some on paper, some on their dry erase tables, and some using sticky notes. There was a hum of excitement throughout the room as the students selected objects from their treasure chest to use in their story, and they orally rehearsed them. There were 3 teachers spread throughout the classroom, encouraging students along in their writing. I'm going to turn the mic over at this point to let you hear from our teachers first and then our students, but I really do just want to highlight the planning and collaboration of Mrs. Sirigliano, Ms. Franks, and Mrs. Walker that allowed a project like this to be successful, and I look forward to this continued collaboration and use of our Makerspace in such a powerful and positive manner. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you, parents, for taking your children here tonight. I truly appreciate it. Thank you for having us. The children are very excited to share their hard work with all of you. So I'm here just to speak a little bit about the goals of the writing workshop. We do it to help our students see writing as a way of telling a story, telling about things. We do it to develop our students' fluency in writing. We provide opportunities for students to learn to use their grammar and their mechanics. in the context of their own writing. And we also do this to help students learn about the different genres and the writing forms during a focused instruction, which we call a mini lesson, and hopefully motivating all of our students and writers to be self-confident. Some of the topics that I touch upon in first grade are small moments, realistic fiction, how-to books, all about books, poetry, and persuasive writing. Throughout these lessons, students learn how to plan or brainstorm all of their ideas. They write or illustrate their story. They revise and conference, and finally they get to share. We call it a celebration. Throughout these, some strategies that they've been taught this year to help get their ideas on paper are to tell the story across their fingers, helps them just to organize their thoughts. They play the story out like a movie in their head. And another strategy which they're going to teach you tonight is somebody wanted but so then. And basically those words help the kids to focus on having a character in their story, a setting, a problem or wish, and then finally a solution to their story. So, Ms. Franks, I think. No, sorry, Ms. Walker will share a little bit more with you.
Good evening, thank you for having us. The idea of hacking the Writer's Workshop came from this professional book that I read called Make Writing. It's part of the Hack Learning series, if you've ever heard of it. And as Mrs. Studo said, the makerspace has been really exciting at Brookdale. For me, the next step was to see where we could take the ideas of the makerspace and connect to curriculum and standards. Give our kids new ways to meet standards in an innovative way. I want to thank Ms. Franks and Ms. Sorigliano for just being ready to take a risk. I say things like, well, let's do a flash mob, and they're like, yes, or let's hack the Writer's Workshop, and they're like, okay. So thank you guys for just being willing to being all in when I say something crazy. Making writing is about transcending the traditional tools of writing, and transcending the traditional tools of writing and giving students access to loose parts, such as manipulatives, post-its, clay, and robotics, along with freedom of movement and structure. Students are still accessing the critical standards of writing and speaking, but with a fresh lens and a new voice. What was great about this is the objectives remain the same for every student, but making writing removes the print barrier so that all students can iterate and develop their writing. This was kind of the quote that really resonated with me when I read this book. Making writing isn't about abandoning Writer's Workshop or evading required curriculum. It's about pursuing outcomes in ways that support writers who need to move, build, mix, tinker, blend, sculpt, shoot, smear, and tack their writing together physically. And that's by the author, Angela Stockman. And that's what our first graders need. They need to get up and move. So this is just kind of taking the ideas of writing and hacking it. So they're really excited to share what they did with you today. We do have a video, but we're still trying to get permission. Yeah, it's me. It's my fault. So I'm going to go hack the computer over there.
Technology issue, but we have access on the computer.
Yeah, I don't know why there it's not.
Access on the board.
Yeah.
Wow.
So.
Yeah. So I'd like to introduce Ms. Franks. Yeah. We only have blue paper left at Brookdale, so that's
Made it worse. I made it worse.
You know what, if you
Second
click,
tab up top.
request access, and I might be able to go in. Okay, I'll go and check it.
Okay.
We can always go back.
You want me to go back to the other screen?
Yeah, we'll go back to it.
okay. Can you hear me?
Okay. So the first question we asked ourselves was how do we engage and empower students in combining text and making? And we know that writing is very complex and it involves multiple processes, such as generating and planning ideas, organizing ideas, getting those ideas down onto paper, and that's just the planning and drafting stages of writing. So for children and adults alike, the writing workshop is really broken up into many specific parts and many lessons that follow each part. So you can imagine how synthesizing all of this information might be a little daunting, for students who struggle, or for students who simply just aren't as engaged in writing, because I know plenty of them, and I have friends my age who still are just not engaged in writing. However, with the help of making writing, we empower students in combining text and making by adding elements of choice throughout the process, which we know is, with students, is incredibly important. It makes them more engaged overall, and their desire to write with choice, as simple as paper or shooting something across the table, right? Obviously, their ears are going to perk up at that. So students are able to select characters and items found in the treasure box. You guys are going to see that when you tinker on your own. They're given choice when creating a plot using the somebody wanted but so then fiction story structure, as Mrs. C mentioned before. And they're also provided with a visual aid, and their graphic organizer winds up coming to life. And the kids are going to show you that later. The Ozo box are super cool as well. So then the second question we asked ourselves is, how do we move from making to connecting to the curriculum? Which obviously all the fun things we want to do have to relate back to the curriculum. So the objective remains the same for all students. However, the concept of making writing gives students the freedom to tinker and the time to process information through the different modes of feedback. Auditorily, right, by rehearsing their stories as they travel through the Ozo box. Kinesthetically, by planning and mapping out the physical stories, right? You guys reached into the treasure box and placed your little items on your boards, and that allowed you to be engaged in that way kinesthetically with the touch feedback. And then also through visual feedback, by watching the Ozo box travel through the somebody wanted but so then pattern. So once students have effectively planned their stories, and you must be tired thinking about all that, they can then begin transcribing them using print. So students are supported in this process by using their own experiences and physical planning during the making writing time. The process of making writing gives students who have print barriers, as Mrs. Walker mentioned before, which could be anything from a specific learning disability or students who simply just struggle when it comes to writing and aren't as engaged, access to creating a story by making the writing first, not just simply putting it onto paper. And now, I don't know what to do. Okay. Oh, I did that. There we go.
Yeah, just, oh,
Okay, I'm gonna put that down.
Just to kind of give you an idea of what this writing workshop time looked like in a makerspace for our students.
should we have volume or no?
Yeah, well, it's just takeaways.
No.
That's making some noise. So Liam right there is starting to retell his story using the Ozo box.
Race tables, some of them are paper choices.
Frozen screens, not like you have a meeting session. Can you minimize it? Yeah, that one.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, so we're going to introduce the everybody that you really want to hear from. And our first speaker is Katie Gross.
Hi, my name is Katie Groves. During library, we read The Magician's Secret. In this story, Charlie listens to stories that his grandfather tells him. His grandfather gets his story ideas from his treasure chest. After the story, we each got our own treasure chest to try to come up with our own story. I liked coming up with my story because I had to use my imagination, just like the grandfather in The Magician's Secret.
And next we have Drew Clutterbuck.
Hi, my name is Drew Clutterbuck. During the writer's workshop in the makerspace, we each got a treasure box. In my treasure box, there's tacky, glue, juice, a mouse, unicycle, glasses, and gems. My story was about a rattlesnake who wanted a fat mouse to eat, but there was a river of sticky juice and glue. So he built bridges and went across and to get the mouse and eat him for dinner. I like brainstorming with the items in my treasure box because I got to use my imagination.
Liam Groves.
Hi, my name is Liam Groves. In my treasure box, I had a tree, 2 gems, a lamb, 2 dinosaurs, and a rock. I started by using the objects and moving them around to create the main part of my story. I also used Play-Doh to build the portal that the lamb got sucked into. Then I decided not to use Play-Doh. Because I changed the setting of the story to Dino Land. Once I finished brainstorming with my objects, I used Post-its to write a draft of my story. Then I changed some of the Post-its around until I was happy with my story. Next, I wrote my final story. It is about a lamb who lives in Dino Land that found a gem inside a bottle with a school. The school said there was another gem hidden somewhere, so the lamb went on a journey to find the other gem. I like coding my other book because I could choose codes that were good for my story.
Quinn DeMilner.
Hi, my name is Quinn Leone. After we brainstormed our story ideas using our treasure box, we got to code our stories using Ozobots. Ozobots are robots that read color code. You can code an Ozobot to do special moves like Tornado, Nitro Boost, and Battle. I like coding the Ozobot to go along with my story because it helped me to retell my story using more details. I like using Ozobots in the makerspace because it helps me to work through mistakes in my code and not give up when it doesn't work right away. It was cool to code the Ozobot to go through my story during Writer's Workshop in the makerspace.
Nicholas Corcione.
Hi, my name is Nicholas Corsione, and here's my story. Once there lived an orange tiger named Jacob. He saw some gems and he wanted to take them. A mouse saw them first. He tricked the tiger into eating bananas. Bananas were the tiger's favorite food. Jacob was distracted by the bananas, so the mouse got the gems. The end. It was fun to use the makerspace to build a story and then write it. The Ozobots were the best part.
Eleanor Walker.
Hi, my name is Eleanor Walker. I like going into the makerspace for Writer's Workshop because I like coding the Ozobots. It was fun and cool to see my story come to life. I like being able to build my story using the objects in my treasure box. I also like being able to use Play-Doh, Post-its, and the whiteboard tables to help me organize and move my ideas around. Once I had all my ideas together, I really enjoyed writing my final story. P.S. It was about a girl who found a purple cat and they became friends.
You guys are awesome. I'm so proud of you. So, now you know that you can't get away with not doing anything when bricklaw comes. So our
Get us
first
every year.
graders, yeah, they're gonna come over with, these are the kind of guidelines that we gave them. They're gonna give you one of those somebody wanted but so then brainstorming sheets, an Ozobot, and they're going to show you how the Ozobot works and how you can write color code. And the questions that we ask them, how might we iterate our stories or change things around? How can we add the code to enhance a storyline? And how might we eventually transition these stories to print? We won't make you do that, but they just want to show you some of what they've learned.
So.
Come on over here. Thank you so much. All right. Okay. So you can help me? Okay. Oh boy. So, okay. So I do that first? Okay. Okay. So for this, I'm going to move slow. I would start with red there. So I would go. Two blacks and red. Slow, and then it's going to go. Go left. One jump left, one left. All right, we're gonna give it a shot. So we're gonna do this. And then what happens? But then we're gonna. And that's what makes it. Do Alright, not gonna make it up? Okay. So I'm gonna Ringo wanted a gem, pink gem, the pink flamingo wanted a pink gem, but the cat, so next, then, but the cat wants also, flamingo on there, power gem, but the black cat wants to be cat with a fan. So then, the baby rescues this power gem. Is that good? And then what do I do?
So I know we probably didn't give our members of the board sufficient independent writing time to really brainstorm and get your stories done. But we hope that you at least you're always welcome to come. I'm sure our first graders would be happy to have you come finish. But we hope you at least got a little glimpse into what you're required to do and how the local bots work. Anyone want to share their initial experience or the start to their story?
What's this? Slow down. And then what was that? We didn't even get to the story yet. We're still on. But then it gets stuck.
We might have to let the members of the board come to Brookdale today.
Do you have a story yet? Look at my story. Once upon a time, Pink Flamingo, who wanted a pink power gem, bought the black cat blocking his path with a fan. So then, the baby rescued the pink power gem for the flamingo. They all live happily ever after.
Okay, so my somebody
We're done.
has to be
High five. Got me? Oh, wait, they better wait.
and then who wants the birthday cake?
Oh. That's right, you turn. No, I don't see jump ahead.
We came up with a really cool story together. So we're going to share here. We'll share what our story's going to be.
Yeah.
What do you want to share?
The whale wanted the ice cream cone, but the scorpion wanted it too. So the crab ate the scorpion, and then the crab took over the world.
Top that, Mr. Elliott.
I can't. I really did. I already said my story.
I missed it.
Oh,
I was so
all right.
over here.
Okay.
I want to hear.
Once there was a pink flamingo that wanted the pink power gem, but the black cat was blocking his path with a fan. So then, the baby came to the rescue and got the pink power gem for the flamingo, and they all lived happily ever after.
He watches a lot of cartoons.
That's what they used to.
Only kids do.
Oh, no, no.
So I try.
You gotta
Thank you for your help.
So thanks again for having us tonight. I know that, and our Brookdale students can attest that sometimes we're really involved in writing workshop and we want to keep going.
Yeah.
Sometimes as writers, for the sake of time, we just need to stop where we are and we'll pick up tomorrow. So our offer does still stand. You're more than welcome to stop by Brookdale, and I'm sure our first graders will continue to share with you their experience, and we'll give you some more coaching as far as the Ozo box and how you can continue to create your story. So boys and girls, how did the Board of Ed members do?
I just want to say a few words. First of all, for the students, we can't thank you enough for not only coming out tonight. You always do an amazing job, but you did such a great job publicly speaking and presenting, which is such a great quality and skill to learn. But even more impressive, you did a great job teaching us, so thank you very much for coming out. Let's give them another round of applause. And to our staff, I can't thank you enough for coming out, leading the way, showing us, not only is this interesting because it's creative, it merges maker with writing workshop, you could clearly see the excitement with our students and with the adults, but it's just a testament to your hard work and to your imagination, your creativity, so keep doing what you're doing amazing work, and thank you for everything. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Just to feedback on that, it's just amazing to see where this has come over the last several years. I think, it's been 15 years since my oldest was in second grade, and it's just shocking to, see where we are now. So thank you, everybody. What do you Dad?
Good job, everybody!
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. That was great. Thank you so much.
Thanks again to everybody. As much as I know it's a lot of fun to be here this evening, but this is your opportunity to go home and do whatever you want before we begin our next presentation. So thank you for all for coming out tonight.
Yay! Good job, everybody!
Next up, we have Mrs. Carol Thomas, who's the Vice President of the Verona Education Association, and she'll be presenting the annual VEA annual report. That was recited.
I want Mrs. Studo to see the cover slide here, because it's her with the big snake. And who doesn't love a giant snake? I love giant snakes. I tried to make it over for one of the presentations. Didn't get a chance to do it. So thank you. As it's really said, my name is Carol Thomas. I'm the Vice President of the Verona Education Association, which is the labor association that represents all the teachers and custodians and secretaries and all the professional, the paraprofessionals in the district. So thanks for having me. We have two programs really. One is called the Pride in Public Education program, and the other is Families in School Together program. So I'd like to share with you some of the projects that we undertook this year. Right button, there we go. So the goals of the Pride program is really to foster positive community relationships within our township, and we do that by enhancing the educational opportunities of our students. And the Families in School Together program provides opportunities for Verona families to work cooperatively with our schools, again, in order to enhance our students' educational experiences. So, I'd like to share what some of those programs were this year. This is the second year that we've done work with the Out of the Darkness Association, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. We're a major sponsor for the Out of the Darkness Walk. Not only are we a sponsor, but we also have a large team that walks in addition to volunteering. So we were a $1,000 gold sponsor this year, plus the additional funds that our individuals raised. So we're really happy to work with this organization. It came out of some sad times in Verona, but we're hoping that through our work we can further the goal of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Thank you. The other walk, we're out. We walk a lot. And we're all in the cold, it seems. This one was colder than the first one. So the Miles of Hope Turkey Trot for Team Zoe is also in the fall. This is the second year we were able to be a major sponsor for the Turkey Trot. And we're really happy to contribute in any way possible to the Progeria Foundation and to support the Benny family. We really look forward to a long partnership with this organization. We should be able to continue our $800 sponsorship donation, which is a major sponsor, plus the monies that our individual teams raise. So we have a lot of people come out. They're trying to show their Team Zoe shirts, but it was tricky that way. As we've done in the past, we also contribute to the Marching Maroon and White Band Festival. So we make I think it's a $500 donation to the fundraiser, but we also give out seat cushions. So if you come to the festival, make sure take the seat cushion, because that can get cold and wet. And
I never knew that.
Well, I've only been doing it a couple days, or a couple years.
I need one.
Yeah,
Let's
after,
go. Something
time, there we go. This was new for us this year. We're happy to be able to join and support our teacher Kim Payne, is the school psychologist at HPW, but her daughter Savannah suffers from kidney disease, and Kim runs this fundraiser for the Kidney Foundation, and it's called Strike Out Kidney Cancer. So we were able to sponsor it this year, and we had two teams, a team of teachers and a team of paraprofessionals all went up to Boonton to join the Strike Out Kidney Cancer fundraiser. It was a lot of fun. But we look for these opportunities to support the children in our community, or the children of our staff members, or however we can. As educators and coaches, we're really proud of all of our student athletes. They work incredibly hard. This year we had a chance to make contributions, $500 contributions to 3 different teams, and we chose the teams that are still paying to play, or they have to pay to play, or compete. So it's the swim team, who had a very successful season, lacrosse team, who I think they're just about finished, right? They had a great lacrosse. Both lacrosse teams have had a wonderful season. And the hockey team had a nice run, the Woodbridge Verona hockey team. So we're glad to be able to help those teams out. In March, there's the Essex County Education Association Pride in Education Expo at the mall. If you've ever been up to the mall in March, you might have seen this, that there's projects displayed from counties, schools all over the county. And Verona, we're increasing our numbers every year, the number of tables that we get, and the amount of projects that we put out. The fine and practical arts departments from all 6 schools, including Mrs. V, Mrs. J, Mr. S, Mrs. Sherman, Mrs. McKelvey McLaughlin. I'm going to give her letters too. So, and Mrs. Chicatano have been displaying their projects at the mall for a while. Recently, Ms. Hartz Zambrano from HB has added her TED projects, her technology, education, and design projects. And she also helps set up the expo. So does Mr. Soltamaki and Mr. J. Aiello. So I really appreciate that. It's a busy time getting that all set up.
Ms. Thomas, that's been going on for many years with the
It's
VA,
been going on for
right?
many years. We're trying to expand who's presenting. It's generally been for art teachers, really fine art teachers, but now we're expanding to Mrs. Zambrano and more of the graphic arts here, and I even snuck something this year. So we're trying to encourage other teachers to get involved. In fact, if they're great at Lanning, brought their social studies projects up. So you can see we have a representation from all the schools, and it's a busy time, but we're trying to get out to all the teachers to bring up more of the projects to show off, some of the great work that they're really doing. During the expo is when we award the SAE contest winners. Again, this is a county award, but the students from Verona participate through the association. The county association conducts the essay contest every year. The teachers from multiple grade levels all across the schools offer the opportunity to their students to enter the contest. A local committee chooses one from each grade level to submit to the county. And we entered essays in 7 grade levels this year, and 6 students placed in the top 3 in their grade level. And those students were invited to read their essays on award night. I have to be immodest about Verona students that generally, I tell them if you enter, you place for a 2nd or 3rd. So teachers do a great job, the writers. We don't have to have a lot of submissions locally because they move on and they do well. These are some of our winners. All 4 Wynn sisters submitted essays. 2 of them happened to be in first place in the county. The others were fabulous essays anyway. And Owen was also there that night. Not all the children came up and read their essays, but they were all won Knoxbury awards. The first place is $100, second place is $75 and $50, and they get nice certificates, so it's a fun night. We also, for the first time, partnered with Verona Together for the cornhole tournament. This came in late for us, but we managed to move around some of our funds because we really wanted to participate in this homegrown project. We became a major lane sponsor for $750 and then collected over $400 amongst the staff in town. So that was used in the silent auction to buy an iPad for the silent auction. So hopefully that'll be a continuing program in town. Not nearly as much fun as the kids, am I? But this is, if you go to the workshops, if you go to the art shows at Lanning and Forest, the association also sponsors the workshops that Mrs. Verona offers. This year is Art Around the World, so it's the association that pays for all the materials that are used in those workshops for the parents and students to participate in. So that's fun. If you've never been to our show, you just have to go. Especially the one coming up, it's tomorrow, right? Tomorrow night.
Tomorrow.
The Creative Arts Festival here at the high school has a lot of different things going on. It's a wonderful experience. But in terms of the Education Association, we contribute, now we're up to $600 for the glass. I mean, the mosaics are amazing what they do. So they're always hungry for more funds to be able to fund the glass, and we're really happy to be able to help Mr. Sherman out with that project. Another project that's started last year is the Verona Music Family Barbecue Picnic, and that's families in 4th through 12th grade participate in a barbecue at HBW. I think it's to bring the music family together and bolster the feeling of togetherness within that group. So we're really happy. This year will be our donation of over $400 will be going toward desserts and some of the other products at the family barbecue. So all told, the association contributes about $10,000 to local organizations, not including the one district, one vote. We'll talk about that in a second. Teachers and other association professionals have volunteered at over 10 events in the township, and we do this lovingly. We do it because we're in this together. We enjoy doing it. We enjoy being part of the community, and the union label a few years ago wasn't so popular, but we're trying to explain that, show the community that it is positive, and we do embrace what we're doing. We embrace it wholeheartedly. Are really excited. Mrs. Walker's going to come help explain this. Just use much better. All right, you tell me
Me again. I just wanted to say I'm so grateful to the VEA for taking on the funding for One District, One Book. This program has been around since 2012, and it really represents thousands of hours of families reading together in Verona. It's a really special program, very close to my heart. I call it my professional passion project. For the past 2 years, the financial support of the VEA has allowed this program to grow into a multifaceted experience for our families, our students, and our staff. This year's book, A Boy Called Bat, featured a main character on the autism spectrum. The book sparked wonderful conversations about empathy and acceptance. The main character wanted to adopt a baby skunk. That was a main plot line. And so one of the culminating experiences supported by the VEA was bringing in a wildlife exhibition for every school. So every kid got to meet a skunk and connect with the story in that way. Also met some other animals. That was Mrs. Studo's favorite part of the entire year.
Did she really like it? That's what I want to know.
You can tell by her face.
Okay.
The FAST grant also supported 2 additional culminating activities. New Jersey Neurodiversity came in and did a student workshop where they shared with students different ways that a friend on the autism spectrum might experience their senses and how we can support their needs. Each student then made their own fidget tool. And the same organization, New Jersey Neurodiversity, also presented a half-day professional workshop to all elementary staff and paraprofessionals on supporting neurodiversity and autism in the classroom. All in, this grant was approximately $13,000. And again, I want to share my gratitude to the VEA. Thank you so much, Carol, for bringing this idea to kind of collaborate on this, because it's allowed this program to just get bigger and better every year. So thank you so much.
Well, it can't be understated the work Mrs. Walker does with the One District One Park. I think everybody in town realizes the work it's done. It's really been our pleasure to be able to open up our families and schools together. It's the ideal project for a families and school together that an association like ours is looking for. So we're really glad to partner that. So, thank you for having us. Questions? Thoughts?
I would just like to thank you and the VEA for supporting these types of programs. Yes, budgetarily it's important, because there are a lot of things that we can't fit into the budget that we would love to. And we have to prioritize, and we try to do the best job we can every year. But these sorts of programs, even more than that, the fact that the VEA, yourself, and all of our teachers support it goes above and beyond. It allows for a real enriching experience. So clearly there's a big testament, a huge testament to committing to enhancing programs. But also what's really wonderful is all of the social causes that are up there, right? Which really is what the Verona community is all about. So thank you to the VEA.
We're trying to support, our whole, it's family. We're not just, teaching, we're supporting our students in and out of school. Thank you.
Yes.
Just as an aside, there's another walk on June 9th. The county association is sponsoring it. Guess who's on the county committee? But we have a team of Verona teachers, so everyone wants to join that team. It's Crystal Cruz from the preschool at Lanning put the team together. It's a team from Mighty Miko. Miko is in our elementary, or in our primary school, our preschool intervention program, and so we couldn't sponsor the whole walk because we honestly used up all the money we had. So I got the county to sponsor it, and but we do have a team, so we'll be raising additional funds.
Where's that taking place?
Verona Park.
Verona Park.
Thomas, I'll just add that, not only is the VEA an asset for its members, but you're a tremendous asset for the community as well. And, we thank you for that, for the money you raise, for the causes you donate your time to. It's noticed, but I think it's also important that you come up here annually and let everybody know what you've been up to as an organization. So thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, and that concludes our presentations for this evening. We'll move on to the superintendent's report.
Good evening, everyone. So just a few updates to share with the public and with the board. First, seems like quite a while ago, but I just want to publicly thank the Lanning Avenue SCA and the entire Lanning Avenue community. On May 17th was the centennial celebration, 100 years of Lanning Avenue School. I had an opportunity to be there. Mr. Freund, the teachers, the parents did an absolutely incredible job. Students had such a great time with their celebration that went well beyond the school day. It was a well-organized event, and it couldn't have been possible without a lot of hands on deck to make it a fun day for the kids. So it's something that they'll surely remember for many years to come. So congratulations to them. I do, in the spirit of grants and support, do want to draw everyone's attention this evening to Resolution 7.2. We do have the Verona Foundation for Educational Excellence has awarded 2 grants, one for $350 for Mrs. Kleineck, our librarian at HBW Middle School. FaceTime with Real Faces is the name of her grant. And Mrs. Shanley, who is our physical education teacher at Verona High School. That's a grant of $6,205 for CrossFit and mobility equipment, as that space has become greatly enhanced over the past 2 years. So thank you to VFE for that financial support and their support of innovation. Resolution number 11 this evening. That resolution is something we've been talking about for many, many months around the referendum. So as we've been discussing it, and there will be more information coming out in the months ahead, we are planning a new referendum that will be going out to the taxpayers for a vote in November on Election Day. So as we go into the summer, we will be putting together press releases and video footage creating a schedule of meeting dates where we will go out to all of the SCA meetings at each of the schools. We will also be having some open forums and walkthroughs so parents and community members can see some of the facilities that perhaps you wouldn't have access to because they're in the buildings. So that way people can see exactly what this looks like up front and personal. And we'll have some information sessions. We'll schedule a presentation for the board meeting presentation, but we'll also have information sessions most likely on the weekend. And we'll set up a couple of dates and times. So there will be more information coming out. That resolution is an official resolution for the board to grant approval to move ahead with the project and allows the architect, our architect of record, to go ahead and file all of the paperwork with the state. So that way we can get all of the documentation going so we can actually put the question up in November of 2019. And two more updates. I'll save athletics for last just to give everyone a rundown since Mr. Merkler did give a presentation a few weeks ago, but a lot has happened since then. But as far as, we've been talking a lot about pilot, and I think it's important for us to bring it up again. So I just wanted to bring up as an opportunity here to just continue to revisit it each of our meetings. So for those members of the public who are hearing this for the first time, affordable housing is a reality through the Mount Laurel case of 1975 that is impacting Verona, but is also impacting all communities. Naturally, we're concerned because of the potential impact it could have, and it likely will have on our schools. Specifically, one of the things that we've been talking about most recently in public, but the conversation's been going on for quite a long time between myself and the town manager of record at the time. Currently it's Mr. Cavallo, Matt Cavallo, but the Board of Ed, at least on 2 occasions since I've been superintendent, and even many years before me, has had sit-downs with the town council around the sharing of pilot funds. That's been a hot topic across the state, and unfortunately, we have not had much of a result. And without going into it too much, the concern on our end, and I've shared this with the board shares the same sentiment, is that the current proposal by the town council is to explore development of the Cameco property on Bloomfield Avenue and to make that property affordable housing. We recognize the challenges that come along with it, and any child that moves and lives in Verona, we will educate them all. They are our students. However, I am gravely concerned about the impact that could potentially and most likely will have on the student enrollment here in Verona. With a proposed plan of 100 units on the Cameco property, which is a combination of, initially proposed at this point, 21 bedroom units, 62 bedroom units, and 23 bedroom units. The concern is that it will bring likely upwards of 100 children to the Verona community from an already growing population. Now, I'll just share as a reminder, last summer the board approved the resolution where any child, any family that moves into what we'll call higher density housing with any development where there's a high concentration of apartment or condo units that would be developed dating back to last year or even currently and then moving forward in Verona, even 20 years from now, would allow the superintendent with the administration to redirect the student who's enrolled to a school where the enrollment is lower. So hypothetically, and this is in an effort to really protect against the district, to really control for any budgetary implications and staffing needs. So hypothetically, had we not done that, we would have potentially 100 or more students moving into the Cameco property, and all of those children would go to the F.N. Brown School. That would be highly problematic. Highly problematic. It would be disastrous, actually, because we could not accommodate 100 more students at F.N. Brown, which is nearing its capacity that it's the highest enrollment it has ever had. F.N. Brown is actually predicted right now, based on our current enrollment figures for next year, we will have 292 children there. A few years ago, we had 230. So we're running out of space. There's a pressure that it puts on our staffing, which ultimately puts pressure on the budget, which causes us to potentially have to cut existing programs, which we don't want to do. As you could see by Mrs. Thomas's presentation tonight, Brookdale Avenue School's presentation, we have a community and a program that we're really proud of, and we should not be sacrificing anything that's going to be a detriment to our children. That's just, quite frankly, unacceptable. We have been discussing this with the township. Unfortunately, we have not made any headway yet. In result of getting pilot funds when they're going into these deals with the developers. So the reason for getting some of these pilot funds is that when you agree to a pilot deal with a developer, unfortunately, the Verona Public Schools does not receive any financial contribution from that deal whatsoever. However, what we will get is upwards of 100 students that we will educate just like every other child in this community, but we will not get one more penny for doing that, which with a 2% cap forces us to do nothing more than to go into our existing budget and to make cuts elsewhere, which, as I said before, we shouldn't be doing. So Mr. Elliott has spoken with the council.
I've spoken with every member personally, and I've attended the last 2 meetings to voice my concerns.
Thank you for that. I've spoken with the town manager on numerous occasions. I've spoken with the council members. Mr. Elliott has sent an email to the council. I've sent an email to the council. I did have some council members reach out to me as well. I do have a meeting scheduled tentatively with Mr. Cavallo, who's the township manager. I'm waiting for confirmation. It is an issue that I'm pressing with them. I am hoping that the meeting will take place this Friday. And Mr. Cavallo has shared with me that the financial consultant for the township around pilot will be attending that meeting to discuss what pilot funds, if any, will be granted, awarded, shared with the public schools. But once again, if a development is built and we recognize that that is going to happen in one way, shape, or form, and we don't receive funds, we're going to have a problem. And the problem is actually, at this point, not the concern regarding the space at this point, although I think that down the line, when we see what those numbers look like, that will be a reality. It's just too soon to tell. But the immediate implication is if 100 students move in, even though we're able to send students to different elementary schools, the problem will be it will cause 3, 4, or the requirement, the necessity for 5 additional teachers, and we don't have the money for that. Every time we hire a new teacher, a new position, it's about $75,000 between what an entry-level salary is plus a health benefit package. That's the number that we more or less ballpark use, which is fairly accurate. Multiply that number times 4, and that's $300,000 we don't have. And that's on the low end, which means we've got to go cut somewhere else. I just don't think that that's fair, and it's definitely not acceptable. So we'll see what happens with the town end of it as they're going through the process.
I'm just going to piggyback on that a little bit, and I probably won't be as diplomatic as Dr. Dionisi is, because that's just not who I am. The town's made it clear through their actions over the last several development projects that have been approved that they're going to move forward with pilot agreements with every single one. We have 4 existing ones, and they've approved over the last several months, I believe, at least 2, maybe 3, and I think there's another one pending as well. That's going to have a dramatic effect on how we tax these developments and what that tax impact means to us. And a traditional tax structure, and it's most people watching this in the audience and also at home later on will realize that about 55 cents in every tax dollar that you pay in your property taxes goes to the school district to support the schools. Make sure that we have teachers, that we have books, that we have sports programs. That's what that 55 cents on every dollar goes to. Roughly, the remaining 45%, about half of that goes to the township, so they can manage their functions. and then the rest of it goes to the county. And that's a traditional tax structure. In a pilot tax structure, in a payment in lieu of taxes structure, what happens is that 5% goes to the county, and 95% goes to the town, and zero goes to the schools. Nothing. So as they continue to develop these areas, these small pockets of town that, frankly, we didn't even know really existed, but things change and property gets sold, and we're left with the ramifications of it. The township has decided to cut the schools out of the equation, the funding equation. Now, the fair and reasonable thing to do, and what a lot of towns are doing, is that when they enter into these agreements, oh, and by the way, these agreements are typically, a pilot structure is usually for an area in need of redevelopment. It's a blighted area. There's no blighted areas in Verona. We don't need to give builders enticements to build in Verona. They're clamoring to build in Verona. But for whatever reason, and it's a financial reason, the township thinks that it's to their advantage to take 95% of that money, whatever it's structured, it's an agreed upon amount, and keep it for their own use, and not fund the schools. We've been asking for 10 years for the town council to enter into a revenue sharing agreement with us. All we get from every council member that I've ever talked to, from every town manager I've ever talked to, from every mayor I ever talked to, we'll look at it. We'll look at it. How long does it take for them to look at this issue? Frankly, I think 10 years is enough. So we're kind of pressing them on that, and they're not real happy about it. But we're going to keep pressing because this issue, and I said it at the 2 meetings I went to and spoke at, is that they have lit a time bomb that's going to go off in 5 years. The population in our schools is going to explode as a result of this. Now, I understand that they have no ability in many respects to determine if a builder is going to build here. If a property owner wants to sell it to someone and wants to develop, as long as it's within zoning rules, it's going to happen. But if they did it through a traditional structure, we would not be as impacted as we are under a pilot. So they're refusing to have this. My points are, 1, they're refusing to have discussions on this issue, and 2, they're also refusing to even consult with us. Best practices, as laid out by the state, is that the council would approach the district and say, we're thinking about doing this pilot agreement here. What do you think that's going to do? How's that going to impact the school district? We don't hear that. We hear it second, third hand that they're going to be doing this. We read it in the papers, we read it in the blogs. That's how we're finding out about this information. So we're not going to accept that anymore. So I hope they're watching. I hope our town manager's watching and understands that this is not an issue that's going to be going away. That's what the discussion item more than it. But regardless, it's something I'm pretty fired up about. And
Any other comments from the board? Okay. All right. And my last update is around athletics. Mr. Merkler, as I mentioned, gave us the spring update at the last meeting on May 14th. But a lot has happened since then, so we do still, I'll save those for last, but I'll work my way backwards here on my list. Boys tennis advanced to the sectional semifinal, so congratulations to them. The season is now over for all of these athletics except for the last 2 or 3 that I'll mention. As far as golf actually played their last match today, and they did win the North 2 Group 1 championship. Special congratulations to Jack Strapoli, who is a senior here at Verona High School, who advanced to the Tournament of Champions, which is the statewide tournament, one of the best golfers in the state, and he took third place in Group 2. So huge accomplishment. He's actually going to be playing at Drew University next year. Both the girls lacrosse and the boys lacrosse team, girls lacrosse advanced to the sectional quarterfinals, and boys lacrosse had the best season ever to date. They had an absolute tremendous season. They won their conference for the first time, and they advanced to the sectional quarterfinals. Track is, believe it or not, still going on. We're competing over the weekend. Special congratulations to Isaac Scrivanik, the junior at VHS. He won the North 2 Group 2 Javelin Championship. And Kate Ashley, who's a senior, won the North 2 Group 2 400 Medley Championship. And both boys and girls track advanced a number of student athletes to the group championship next weekend. So track is not quite done yet. So the season goes on long, and the longer you're in it, the better you're doing. So kudos to them. Softball, a little bit of a rain out. They've been doing amazing. They advanced to the North 2 Group 2 finals. They were supposed to play Hanover Park today. That was rescheduled due to anticipated rain by the meteorologist, which never came. Baseball knows that as well. And that's been rescheduled for tomorrow. And then the baseball team doing absolute wonderfully. They advanced to the North 2 Group 2 semifinals. They won on Saturday, I believe. Friday. Oh yeah, that's right. We had a long weekend. That's right. Friday we had off. That's right. And they advance against Lyndhurst, which is rescheduled for tomorrow. So a really great athletic season. We still have a number of teams and student athletes in the mix. So good luck to them, softball and baseball tomorrow, and to track this upcoming weekend. And that's it for the superintendent report.
Thank you, Dr. Denise. Any comments on Dr. Denise's report? Ms. Ardita, do you have anything to report? As it's not on there.
No, I don't, and I just wanted to make the comment about the financial committee meeting was really a committee of the whole
Right, I
tonight,
was
so.
gonna say that. But
Yeah, so I don't know if you wanted,
yeah, I'll touch on it briefly. The finance committee turned out to be just a meeting of the entire board during a private session. We reviewed just a couple items that are actually critically important. One of them was the tax impact of the referendum we're proposing. I don't think we're ready to talk about numbers yet for the public, but the board became aware of what the average tax impact will be per average household. Also, we received from Ms. Nardino and Dr. Demisio is a timetable that's backs up from, if we want to go out in November, which we do, what are the dates that we have to hit. So this is very important and will help us as we move through the summer, especially to make sure we're hitting all the deadlines that we must. Starting with the resolution we have this evening. Anybody else want to comment on that? Okay, then it is any discussion items? Seeing none, we'll move on to resolutions.
okay. Resolve that the board approve resolutions number 1 through number 15, and addendum resolutions number 1 through, addendum resolutions 1, 2, and 3.
Are there any comments from the board on this resolution? Oh, I do have to move it forward. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Day, seconded by Mr. Allworth. Any discussion? I'm rusty, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I had a question resolution number 8. The 2019 Special Services Summer Assignments, is there, do we have a standard, special services assignments that we do every year? Is that just,
So that's for the summer extended school year special education program for students through their IEP through the month of July, the end of June and July. We have our staff who gets hired every year based on what those students' needs in their educational program is.
okay.
So every year around this time, we end up approving those staff members in order to carry out those teaching responsibilities through the summer program.
And it follows the same time frame that the VC program
It does. It coincides with BC.
Anyone else? Any others? Please call roll.
Mr. Allworth?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Aye.
Mrs. Prisco?
Yes.
And Mr. Elliott?
Aye. Are there, okay, at this point in the meeting, I'd like to ask if any members of the public have any comments. When you come to the podium, please state your name and your address.
Sure.
Thank you.
My name is Brooke Gerardo. I live at 47 East Street Place. I'm actually relatively new to the Verona Public Schools. My daughter Evelyn is in FM Brown, first grade, but we didn't go here for kindergarten. She went to private kindergarten because of the half-day K, which ended, she finished K. But we've been enjoying FM Brown, but I am concerned about a couple different things, which is why I wanted to come to the meeting today. First of all, Dr. Dionisio, I appreciate you bringing up the idea of the pilot money being shared from the town council. And Glenn Elliott, I say at the town council meeting, getting up and having what you wanted to say to the town council. And I guess what I would like to know, I have more of a question. What I would like to know is if the discussions don't prove to be very productive, because I know you said you've been trying to talk to the town council
Right.
for 10 years. And Dr. Diniso, you were saying that you'd have to just cut programs from, you know, the school, all of the schools in order to be able to accommodate up to 100 kids. I am a little bit concerned. I just want to know, what if those don't prove to be very productive? What are kind of like future plans for that? I mean, I am concerned about FN Brown, obviously, because the Camoco property is in FN Brown. You know, we also have had children moving from, you know, the Jarrell Street properties that were developed. There's talk about development, you know, maybe in the leaf dump. I feel like a lot of these things fall in FN Brown.
Right.
And I feel like, you know, let's open up the conversation. What are the other possibilities? Is, you know, redrawing the district lines a possibility?
Yes.
Is growing one or more of the schools a possibility?
Yes.
Because I know, you know, there's a lot of stuff out there on social media and people talking about stuff, and they're like, oh, the kids from, you know, that affordable housing can just go to a different school. It's like, well, that's not what we're trying to do. It's just send those kids to a different school. What is?
Well, you know, regardless of what happens with sharing the pilot money, we're going to be faced with additional children in the
Yes,
district.
yes.
That's just inevitable. So I think, you know, a discussion we're going to have, and this board's been always very good about trying to be proactive rather than reactive. But some of this does take a lot of time. But the things we would be forced to look at is redistricting. We've always as a community enjoyed neighborhood schools, and for the foreseeable future, we want to. But if that becomes impossible, then we would have to look at the situation where, you know, so how do we do this? Do we have first and second grade somewhere, and do we do it that way? Right. So that's one possibility that we don't want to do, but may have to happen. Also, depending on enrollment, we may have to, you know, we're talking about going out for referendum in the fall. We may have to go out, once we get a better sense of enrollment, we would have to possibly go out again to add on to some of the buildings. Now, the reality is, we don't have many buildings where we can add more square footage. And the unfortunate reality, you know, situation we have is that where we do have that space is at FN Brown. So we'd have the ability to go out the back. I mean, I know you're obviously familiar with that property.
Yes, or built up from the wing that's already.
Right. I mean, but when you look at other schools, we don't really have the ability to go up. We've looked at that in the past. We looked at that back in 2005 when we did a big building referendum. Just the way the structures, almost all of them are 100 years old. They won't support a second structure without total almost tear down, and you know, which, you know, is tremendously expensive. But those are the two things that, you know, we have in our arsenal right away. Is the first one would be the first and easiest is redistricting and making our school classrooms work for the population we have, and the other one would be adding new space. Now, we don't know how many kids, you know, we're talking about. Right now, from these other areas, we have approximately 23 students that are in the district. We think there could be up to 100 more. That would be across, you know, K through 12. So we obviously need to see where that falls out, and it wouldn't be day one either. But these are the things, because we are a proactive governing body, we'd like to think down the road. So those, I mean, I don't know if you have anything to add to those 2 points.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think you did a great job explaining it. I think the redistricting is, unfortunately, it's something that I know myself and the board wants to avoid at all costs, because there is something to be said for the close-knit neighborhood schools, and I think that that's part of why people move to town. I know that that's one of the reasons why I moved to town with my family. That being said, we may be pushed and forced to get to a point in the future where that's no longer a possibility.
Just to clarify, by redistricting, you mean?
That if I moved into the forest section, that just because I lived in the forest section does not mean that my child would go through the forest school through the whole time.
So you're talking about that instead of redrawing the district lines?
That would be.
Having those children go to a different.
So there could be the possibility of that in the future. There is a possibility.
Both options.
Well, you're talking about both.
And redrawing the district lines is very challenging and difficult. And the reason that that's difficult is that where you draw the line today, even though, set aside the fact that when you redraw any line, there's going to be a lot of upset people. There's not going to be one happy person with a kid in school,
Yeah.
right? We recognize that. And once you draw that line, what happens that, there's no guarantee as that kids who are now within that boundary, the numbers get all thrown out of whack as students kind of graduate up to the middle school and to the high school and on out. So it's a little bit of a moving target, which is impossible to predict because we are such a small town. So being a small town allows us to be nimble in many ways, but it also has its own set of constraints as well, which makes it problematic.
Yeah, and you're always going to have somebody who's going to be kind of upset about it. But at this point in time, I feel like there's been a couple of times in this school year where I wanted to talk to my daughter's teacher. She was telling me that she wasn't really going outside, she wasn't getting much movement over the winter. So I discussed it with the teacher, and the teacher said, they don't, go outside when the weather, is below a certain temperature or whatever it is. And I suggested the gym, gymnasium, but I guess FN Brown just has too many classes, too many kids to even use the gym because they would basically be rotating throughout the entire school day just to make it into the gym and just move. So I feel like right there, kids in FN Brown are kind of like not really moving over the winter because they just have so many kids, And right now, I know that there is, Dr. Lanzo's being very proactive in terms of he has to rearrange where some of the classrooms are going. And I know he submitted that to you, so that another classroom has to be added into the basement with no windows. And I know that the children won't be spending their whole day down there. Those are more of the support services, but I'm a speech language pathologist and I work with children with special needs. I feel like always having to go to the basement to get your support services, not really, really ideal. And when I see that in a town, and obviously we all care about our children's education, which require a Board of Education, but when one school is like struggling for space and opening up what is now a storage room and another school is renting out classrooms, it just seems like the problem is right now. We want to be looking forward, we want to be looking proactively, but we also kind of already have this problem in FN Brown. You said it before, FN Brown can't even really handle.
So I could speak to that a little bit. So the space that I believe that you're talking about on the ground level, across from the cafeteria, that was actually renovated.
It's a legal classroom, yeah.
It is, and it was
has air
actually, and it
conditioning.
was renovated, it has air conditioning, it was renovated as part of the 2008 referendum. So there was a lot of money that was devoted down there in order to correct some water issues, make the whole space brand new tile, HVAC, all new sheetrock, everything was brand new, in an effort to increase the use of space, and to free up space elsewhere because of the programs that we had. And I believe that we had the LSS program that was moved at the time, this is before me,
Yes.
from FN Brown over to Lanning Avenue School while there was an addition. So there were some strategic changes that were made in order to accommodate the changes in the district at the time. The space that Dr. Lanzo is recommending in order to take over from the cafeteria as part of a classroom for next year, that used to be a classroom years ago, many, many years ago when he first started here. And then it was a cafeteria, and it was a classroom again, and now because of the increasing enrollment, it's going to go back to that. So it's a matter of reallocating the space that we have in an effort to obviously accommodate the changes that we have. In addition to that, I think the important thing to note, and perhaps I wasn't clear, I know I've talked about it a lot publicly, but you naturally weren't here for that. So if tomorrow there were a number of students that moved into the Annan Flag Building, the board heard me say this before, one of the schools that keeps me up at night is Brookdale Avenue School, because that Annan Flag Building is right there, and that would have been, if you move into that building, you go to Brookdale Avenue School. If there was a development that was built that was high density in the FN Brown section, like potentially a Camaco, would be very concerning. But and we had this case already, because we passed a resolution last year, if a family moves into the Annan Flag Building, and we'll do the same thing at Camaco, that means that that child or those children would not necessarily go to Brookdale Avenue School. Because if a child moved in and they were in second grade, and hypothetically, the numbers in kindergarten, in second grade at Brookdale Avenue School were 23 students in the class. We would not put the students there. We would look at the enrollment at Forest, Lanning, and FN Brown and see where the enrollment is lowest and provide those options to that parent. Now, it's not ideal, but let's say that that family also has a third grade child. And at Brookdale, Brookdale is available because the numbers are 17 children in that class. Then we would say, you can go to Brookdale, and here are some other options, but there's no guarantee that that family's children will go to the same school. It's not something that we want to do, but it's in an effort to try as best we can to protect the district and the budget from having to split. And when I say split, it means adding an additional teacher, because when we get into and every class size is unique depending on the age of the children and the personalities and their educational needs. But more or less, if we end up getting to 25 students, that's when we look to typically add another teacher. And every time we add another teacher to make the class sizes more palatable, that's about a $75,000 cost to the district. The cuts have to come from somewhere. We don't want to do it, but it's a reality. Based on the constraints with what the state law says that we can provide, we can only increase the budget by 2% on tax levy. We can't exceed any more than that. The only way we can essentially what we call pierce the cap by circumventing that or bypassing it is by going to a second question to the community.
Referendum.
It's not a referendum. It would be like when we did the mental health question and the full day kindergarten question. Those are called second questions because we can exceed the 2% cap by asking a specific question. So if the district in the future is forced to make cuts, believe it or not, we actually have to cut programs first before we can ask the question. So if we cut a program in April, then we would have to put a question out to the taxpayer in November, and it wouldn't be until the following budget year that that would come back in. But that would be the cycle that we have to operate under. Now, unfortunately, those are the rules of engagement that we have to play by. So these are some of the things that we're grappling with, because if the town council doesn't provide us, and what we asked for was, look, our per pupil cost is $14,000 per pupil. Take the tax levy, divide it by the number of kids, there's the number. We asked for $14,000 per pupil, because we would be getting, to Mr. Elliott's point, 55 cents on the dollar, 55% of what the tax revenue stream would be. And now, with pilot, we get zero. But we're going to also get more kids. That's just not fair. So that's why, yes, having the conversations are important. Holding the council and the township accountable is important. And understanding that if they make decisions that have implications, that they have a responsibility in this. And that if there's something that's coming down which will be disastrous, they're going to be predominantly to blame for it, because we have no control over it.
And regarding that, do you have your own counsel to guide you in those conversations?
We do, but everything they've done so far, the statute is very against us in the way it's written. We don't have any legal recourse.
You don't?
We couldn't sue. It's very clear. They don't have to.
But you do have legal counsel in order to guide those.
Oh, without questions, we have
conversations,
legal counsel. Our legal bills are very high.
But there's no obligation by the council. There's no obligation by the council to provide pilot funds to the school district. No legal requirement or obligation whatsoever.
There's a directive from the state that came out, I think, in 2010 that says you should do this, you should do that. But there's absolutely no teeth to it. I think the statute was originally written in the late 90s, early 2000s, really to benefit cities like Asbury Park, Jersey City, even Hoboken at the time, areas that really needed to spur development.
Yeah.
We don't need to spur development.
Right.
So do you feel like what the town council just voted on during the last meeting about sending, was it the town manager into?
That was a farce. That was a farce because we've been negotiating with them for 10 years. They don't, Matt Cavallo, our town manager, and Kevin Ryan, our mayor, met with Dr. Dionisio and Mrs. Fresky in March, and they basically told us after that meeting, no, we're not going to do it. Or they just ignored us. They gave us no response for 2 months until we started to. So their response to Dr. Dionisio and myself being aggressive with him about this was to pass a sham resolution to direct Mr. Cavallo to do something he's already been
To
doing.
discuss something.
Something he's already doing.
Okay.
And it was a very small point in that meeting, but one of the town council members, I forgot who, would have to go back and look, asked the town's ship's attorney, did we have to do this? And he said, no.
But doing it, they were saying, I think, in good faith.
Right, and my point was, then what have we been doing for the last 10 years if we have been negotiating in good faith?
So it seems like there are hard feelings kind of on both sides, so.
Well, I think, I don't know why there's hard feelings on their side, because they're getting called to the mat on their inaction for a decade, and they're all pointing at each other like, well, I wasn't here. Well, everyone there has been there at least 2 years. So, our hard feelings is that you're refusing to negotiate.
Well, I feel like I would like to repeat a suggestion that I did not make, but you were at the meeting, so Will Battersby, who is one of my neighbors, suggests that we maybe start a new committee that have, representation from all 4 quadrants, including Board of Education and the Town Council. So maybe that's another way to come to the table and open up the conversation a little bit more. She seconds that motion.
The upside is that as a result of us, getting a little more aggressive with them, is that they all of a sudden they have been calling for a meeting. He's like, I know I'll be back in their next meeting to have a few words with them.
And I feel like parents would be willing to help with this in any way that we can. All right, thanks for your time. I've taken up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
We didn't cut you off after 4 minutes either.
I was looking for like the 4-minute.
We don't do that. No, we don't do that. We have a culture of listening to what people have to say and having a dialogue.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the discussion.
No worries. Is there anybody else that has any comments? Oh, please come to the podium and state your name and address. Just a reminder.
Rachel Moll, I'm 35 Grove Ave. We have a very, very successful peer mediation program at FN Brown. If you would like the assistance of the 3rd graders.
We may need to call.
Yeah.
I do think that Will's idea was a really good idea. You're adults and they're adults and you're both saying, it's unacceptable to me that you're both saying, as adults, as professional adult people who have been elected to your offices, that you can't get along with each other. That's really, really unfortunate.
Yeah, I don't know if we're saying we can't get along with each other. It's more
Yeah, you are.
that we're at an impasse, right?
You're complaining about 10 years. You know where they will be publicly, and you went, but you said very, very explicitly that you were not there in an official capacity. So why not go in an official capacity, all of you?
Our way of doing things like that in official capacity are really through resolutions and statements. We really can't.
Joint meetings.
And joint meetings.
Yeah,
And we have a joint meeting we're trying to
That's
do.
not working for 10 years now.
This particular point hasn't. Let me be clear. In other aspects, the township has been extraordinarily helpful. It's one issue that I myself and a lot of people here take issue with. In other areas, we have a great relationship on shared services. They've been very helpful. They've taken over maintenance of our grounds. So this is just an issue that's really come to the forefront because of the development we're going to be facing in the next several years. So in other areas, our professional staff talks to their professional staff on a daily basis. And it's
Great relationship.
a great relationship.
Unheard of, actually,
Yeah.
because
This
I
is
speak to
yeah.
VAs and superintendents in other towns, and
Yeah.
it's not like what we have.
This
This
is
is one issue.
This is one issue that we have to get a resolution on.
And through shared services, they provide us services and we in turn provide them a carte blanche, open door policy to all of our buildings round the clock whenever they need it.
Which is
And
also
lots of other services.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we have
fields for the recreation
fields,
department.
buildings, whatever it takes. We work really well together. I mean, Chief Kiernan and the Verona Police Department is terrific.
Oh, they
Arrow
assist with every.
is wonderful with the grounds and, yeah, they're really wonderful.
That's great.
It's just, this is
One thing.
unfortunately, this one significant thing. It's, that has potential implications.
It sounds like you have a lot going for you then, so you should be optimistic.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay.
absolutely.
We're hopeful.
The other major issue is that I do also want to make sure we're all clear that affordable housing is not a bad thing, it's not a good thing.
No.
And those children who may move into that space deserve what you said, an equal education with everybody else.
Same education.
They also deserve a safe walk to school. Grove Ave, Fairview Ave, these are not safe places for children to walk to school. So it is something that I've spoken to the town council on. They made a show of doing something about it. They replaced a street light. But there definitely are going to be really need, I think, for this public or community impact committee to also push the town safety committee to get more county level studies done on the traffic. Because again, more kids walking to school, more people driving cars. We've got the development up on the hill in Cedar Grove. That's going to be a problem as well. We already have a dangerous situation at the foot of FN Brown when you're crossing the street, and a very antagonistic relationship between pedestrians, drivers, and the crossing guard.
Sure.
So getting the township to monitor that more closely would be wonderful help. Last thing, this is a really positive thing. So I'm not all just a scary ogre.
You're not an ogre at all.
We did just start with the township with Steve Neal, a new arts committee. So check it out. It's veronanjarts.org. We are hoping at some point to be able to provide scholarship to kids looking to do higher education in the arts. But we're starting off with a meet and greet on the 13th at Blue Hippo, because that's where everything happens these days in Verona. So we will have a meet and greet. And we do have a, again, Facebook page, Instagram, and the website is veronanjarts.org. So check it out, because we would really love to be working in tandem with the education in town to try to supplement, get our arts to where our music program is so great, our athletics are so great. So let's see some more hands for arts.
That's fabulous. Maybe we can coordinate something and get information out in the weekly folder, the weekly Friday folder that you put out.
That would be great. That would be great.
If you want to send us a flyer, we could blast
Sure,
that out.
I can definitely do that. We are thinking ahead towards some town beautification projects. We'd love those to be all ages, have kids come out and paint things that will be, visible for everybody to see. So as much as we have, a sour stomach about some of this development going on, making the town more beautiful will benefit us all.
Thank you. We live in a great town. It's not that we're negative at all. We're just looking for a fair share of the revenue on that specific issue. That's the one thing. We're going to educate everyone who moves to this town without question, as everyone else is educated. So it's, and I think
Just no matter how we do it.
how we do it. And I think everyone here again is we understand the issue of affordable housing, and I haven't spoken to anybody that think that's a bad thing. That's just a thing.
I think we just need to be wary about having them go as a group to a school that wasn't FN Brown and be a pariah or something.
Yeah, I don't think that's be the case of what happened. It's from my perspective, and this is not my call, I don't think it's great that the township decided to put the bulk of our affordable housing in one location. I think it's better if, usually what happens is the developments, you sprinkle, between 15 and 20%.
They've missed that opportunity.
They did.
They've been fought on the one that's going up at the end of the
Exactly.
afterglow section, and so now we're at
You're
final stages.
Yes, we are.
But it is a good thing. Verona's gotten very expensive, and
Yes, no, it's a good thing.
the teachers, police officers,
Everyone
qualify
needs
for
to live.
affordable
Everyone needs, I know, we've had that, I completely understand. Yep,
thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to come to the podium? Okay, seeing no one, I think we're.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry,
I'll just let
you were
everybody else-
late.
I was letting everybody else do their, hi, Carol Thomas, line Wilson Yacht. I have worn a lot of hats in the last 25 years. The hat before was the association vice president. First of all, I want to say welcome to the new board members. I used to be at the board a lot before I was employed full-time by the Board of Education. I'm still around a lot if you need anything, but I'm also around to put my 2 cents in my education in. So welcome, thanks, and glad to see everybody here. Before I talk to something else, I just want to point out that we're putting in a new garden at HBW. My team, Gardening 7, has started, Mrs. Sordino had things cleaned up nicely outside, so we jumped right on that and said, let's clean up, let's do some things under this willow tree. I want to thank Mrs. Corino Nimbo for her monetary donation to the garden in memory of Bob Ingram, who was a gardener and a town employee, and Bob Green had a great relationship with Bob for the town for years, so she wanted things planted in Bob's memory. I also want to thank Pleasantdale Nursery for donating a very large amount of plants for us. I paid for 4, he gave me 11. So it was, Jerry and Heather down there were great, if you can support them. Let me talk to you as a resident though, a resident that for 25 years you've been active in what's going on in town, and Mr. Armino will back this up. I've been talking to, I sat down in Mr. Martin's office with him when Hilltop was first built and said this pilot is a disaster for Verona. This can't continue. I went to the planning board recently when they're trying to, declare Spectrum Street 360 blighted. It's obviously not a blighted area. That's still up in the air. The planning board, they're going back and forth. It's a show because the planning is going back to the planning board. It's costing the town people for another study that the planning board will then turn around and say this is not an area of need redevelopment, and the town council will then have to declare it an area of need redevelopment to get their $6 billion to build a county.
That's right.
I really encourage everybody, educate yourself on the laws behind what pilot really means. Go to the planning board and the town council, and the idea that Mr. Battersea had is fabulous. Sit down, have a lovely committee. They're not open for that. They will not be open for it. They've told you heard what they told Mr. Elliott there. They've told me the same thing a year ago. They told me the same thing 6 years ago. That they're strapped for money. The money they get from the pilot, they need. Now they're saying excess revenue, we'll talk about sharing. There'll never be, do you have excess revenue in your house? No. They're not going to have excess revenue. So everybody in town needs to educate themselves on what this problem is. They're going to say that we're presenting the whole pilot idea wrong, that if you make a budget for $30 million, you get your $30 million regardless, and then they get what's left over. Go to the next level beyond that. You move to a town for ratables. Well, now we have ratables being built in town that should be bringing in more revenue. Should be relieving our property taxes that we pay to the school district, but it's not because that revenue is being sucked back onto town. There's so many levels of this pilot funding that we need to educate ourselves on.
It's a boondoggle.
It's payment in lieu of taxes, so that they don't have to pay the taxes. I even had an issue with the county. We have how many county parks around us? The county's not even their fair share. It's beautiful, but that's a whole other issue. Really educating everybody about it. At all levels, I would be glad to help with this. This has been an issue for years. I'm sorry I didn't make it to the meeting the other night. I couldn't at the planning meeting. I'm going to the next one.
You're another one that's strapped for meeting time.
And they don't really, they're not a big fan of mine. But because you have to keep pushing for this. So as a town resident, I encourage everybody to do that. The shared services, I've asked Mr. Cavallo for a number on shared services, and that will be the first answer they give you. When you say, share the pilot, they'll say we share things. We cut the grass. Well, they don't cut all the grass. They plow. They run a plow around at Christmas. Or not Christmas, at winter. It's not,
I would
not
switch off.
14,000 a student.
I would switch off and pay for those services if that's what they want to do. If it came to that, and as long as they adequately address the funding.
They bring up the bathroom at FAR, at FM Brown, which they did, 8 years ago now. They still bring that one up. Oh, we built that bathroom at FM Brown.
Well, and they were supposed to help the track, but then the last minute they decided not to. So there's a lot of things they don't do as well.
Okay, so thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so happy that everybody's on this pilot wagon now. It's been, you knew it had to come to a head. And if I was the voice crying out in the desert, that's fine. I'm okay with that. And welcome everybody, and thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
Thanks, Carol.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody else? Oh, we
Yeah,
got
right,
Carol.
huh?
We got Carol's husband. Still state your name and your address, please.
Bob Thomas, 9 Boston Drive, Verona, New Jersey. My wife's been a resident 25 years. I've been a resident 61. So, but nonetheless, the pilot in lieu of taxes, it's unconscionable that they're not negotiating on that. It shouldn't be a negotiation. Because the way I see it, the numbers you've talked about, $14,000 per student. If you're talking about affordable housing, you're talking about, I believe Chemical is probably rental, correct?
Yeah.
Rental means you're going to have a transient population. The transient population with affordable housing probably means those students are going to need more support services than the average student. I mean, if you look statistically, that's...
We don't know about that. Yeah.
Statistically...
I don't want to jump to those conclusions. Right?
Statistically, the more affluent the income, the more higher achieving students you have, because they have the resources for that. So some of those students are going to need more support than the average student. So that $14,000 is, I think, you were right, it's on the lower end. Any support the kids come to our district with, we should support them, and we should give them the best education we can. So we shouldn't be cutting corners there. But I'm just saying the cost is going to be higher than that $14,000, in my opinion. So, and also, if you're going to redistrict, are we obliged to afford busing if they cross Bloomfield Avenue, Lakeside Avenue, or Grove Avenue?
No.
No. Okay.
The township is too small based on the way the law is written with the distance from any residence to a school.
So that's not involved.
Based
I
on
was thinking if we have to transport them, that's another.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing I think is, being that you've been, Glenn, well, everybody's been discussing with the town council, and there's been no resolution, is this the time that maybe we should get the SCA involved and get some key people in there from each
I encourage everyone
section of town?
to speak.
But I think we need leadership to get the SCA heads involved, so they can talk to the parents and get phone chains set up. And, politics is politics. The only time they don't have to do it, so they're not gonna do it. So, what do? You have to have people come out and go to town council meetings and talk about what the concerns are and how unconscionable it is that you're not gonna give, the $14,000 per student, if that's what your formula comes out to be, that you are now affecting the rest of the stakeholders in the schools. And the ones who suffer are going to be the kids. And that's my say.
Thanks,
Okay? I'll keep it short because I know it's, 9 o'clock or so.
We've been here later before.
And my wife said I talk, so I'll end for that. But thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks,
I think maybe it's to mobilize some forces, you do that. You play hardball, you got to play hardball. Okay?
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Anyone else? Okay, now seeing none. Oh, thank you. The next scheduled public meeting will be Monday, June 17th, beginning with confidential session at 5 o'clock in the board conference room.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank
Have a
you.
great